Stimulating the power of SMEs and their associations in Europe. That's the theme of our audience today. And as an introduction, as regards associations, SMEs are more and more asking for tangible benefits. There's, for example, the need for SMEs for easy and simple instruments available in their own languages. Instruments helping them comply with the mandatory regulations and assisting them on their way to reach the voluntary certifications. Therefore, associations need to change their traditional role. From being only lobbying organizations, they have to develop to innovative service providers for the SMEs they are serving. Otherwise, they will face SMEs leaving their associations. Therefore, we have guests here in our studio, and I'd like to welcome these guests. At first, Mrs. Dr. Katharina Berbenni-Rehm, she's CEO, Chief Executive Officer from PROMIS from Luxembourg. Hello and welcome, Mrs. Berbenni-Rehm. And Mr. Bernd Becker. Mr. Bernd Becker is Chairman of Eurocloud Germany and Vice President of Euroclub Europe. And last but not least, Mr. Andrea Benassi, Secretary Generale UEAPNE. Buongiorno, Signore Benassi. The first question is directly coming to you, Mr. Benassi. Throughout Europe, there's an obvious gap between quality and quantity of ICT applications, different levels of knowledge and cultural differences. What possibilities are there to balance the different regions and member states of the European Union, Mr. Benassi?
Well, thank you very much for this question. First of all, we have to say that SMEs from ICT sector have the same, let's say, both opportunities and problems of the rest of SMEs. This is the most important figure that we have to report, and that one of the most important, all the same, the fact that they are the 99%, even in the same sector of ICT. So we have to take care in the same way we do with the other sectors. And we have a direct evidence of this gap, this imbalance that you were mentioning about, the fact that they are concentrated in districts. Why? And this is a question that we really have to put to ourselves when we talk about something that should be really widespread for definition as ICT. The fact is that they are concentrated on clusters because of two main problems linked to the demand and to the supply. To the demand, it's for sure the fact that they do establish where there is a larger market. But most importantly, the supply side problems, in the sense that they do established in this district, in Stockholm, northern Italy, Germany, because of the administrative network, administrative simplification of life that they find, and also one thing that is last but not least, the labor force, manpower. They cannot find this kind of people working for this company all over. So these are the fact that we have to create the same environment in all the regions, in the 27 countries. It is an art challenge.
Mm-hmm. Mrs. Berbenni-Rehm, we have already mentioned the specific role of associations in this context. You are the initiator of PROMIS. Yes. PROMIS, what is the designated role of PROMIS in terms of adapting European associations to more and more sensitize SMEs to make consistent use of adequate tools or also funds?
Yeah. During the last years, we have learned that SMEs are the backbone of Europe's economy, but they are also very heterogeneous, dispersed, and difficult to be reached. The best way to reaching them is to use what is there, the power of associations, the power of chambers of commerce. They are there, they are serving the SMEs. What they need to do is simply to take over a catalyst role and become innovators. And with innovators, I mean simply tutor, mentor, teacher to the SMEs they are serving. Yeah? To do this, on the contrary, they need, of course, ICT instruments that are comprehensive and that can give them the so-called single entry points, yeah, where an SME can enter and they find all in one the structured information, the interactive services, and they do not need to do anything else but taking the services. Yeah? This is what we have developed in the last 10 years together with the support of the European Commission. So a single entry point supporting compliance for micro companies in the field of environment, health and safety, quality, corporate social responsibility, and last but not least, ICT security, data protection, where then an SME feels well protected and fine because it is supported by the associations.
Okay, thanks a lot. Well, protection is a good point for you, Mr. Becker. At this point, congratulations for already 27 countries having an Eurocloud presence and 17 European countries which have a local Eurocloud set up so far. It is remarkable because Eurocloud is only 2 years old, so a young man with a young organization. Now tell us, what exactly does Eurocloud stand for and how can its role in terms of SMB be defined?
Thank you for your question. I need to correct you right away to say that we are with 28 countries already, so even got a new one with us. Talking about Eurocloud is talking about the dynamic of the cloud. And the dynamic we have seen with the growth of Eurocloud is very much related to the dynamic of the cloud. Cloud computing is changing the way IT is provided and consumed and processed, and it will have a lot of impact to the entire industry of all branches, whether these are large companies or small companies. We have seen that we have a slogan, and that slogan is saying cloud computing is a future. That is our truly belief, and that's why we also see that it has to be secure. We have a lot of discussions on the market about ICT security in general and data security in the field of cloud computing in particular. We as an association see that the most value we can contribute to our members is to develop the market so that our members and the market can do business with the customers. So to generate a higher acceptance of cloud services is one of our main targets. All our efforts we have spent so far is to develop trust in cloud. And on the other hand, cloud computing is no national subject anymore. The internet is not a national subject. The internet is global, so cloud computing is global. Business is becoming more and more global. Even small media enterprises have partnerships and relations throughout the world, so they use the internet as the instrument to communicate. And that's why we think we have to harmonize the situation in Europe, especially the legal framework in Europe, so that we have identical situations all over the place. National regulations make it very hard in an international business. And the activities in that regard are also one of the key areas of Eurocloud.
And CeBIT, the main theme of CeBIT is managing trust. I think managing trust is not a local theme, it's a global, it's a European theme. That does perfectly fit into your company slogan, does it?
Yeah, so to say, the CeBIT follows the idea we have started 2 years ago. No. The point is, when we started, we first started to look at the legal frameworks we have in the various countries. We developed guidelines to educate on what is needed to provide secure and reliable services, even according to the national regulations. And that was a basis for our development of a trust seal, of a quality seal. That quality seal allows customers who are the owner of the data and who are obliged to identify if a provider is reliable or not. That is responsibility of a customer, that they are even able to identify a trusted provider. It's not that simple to identify a complex technical environment in terms of security, and that is the content of the quality seal we provide. And due to our international setup in Europe, we provide that on an international basis either.
Thanks, Mr. Becker. Mr. Benassi, so when we take Europe in focus, we definitely have to picture both the cultural and the demographic change. I think it's very urgent that all the companies have to focus exactly on these aspects. Isn't there first of all an urgent need for the change of roles in European associations prior to sensitizing SMEs, for example, in the matter of ICT technology, Mr. Benassi?
Yeah, even if I would answer in a quite different way, in the sense that I would not separate the activity of lobbying to the activity of services, because this is a process that already been started some years ago when main organization fully concentrated on services. So what we have now is that they are already concentrated on services, even if because they are the main source of revenues. But anyway, this is not the question at issue today. But what is important is to fully promote policies helping to ease a transition from services to i-services. This is the real challenge that we have in the future. Well, the institution, I should say, and also organization as our members, because when you mean European organization, for sure I think to my organization located in Brussels, but what is really important are the organizations that meet every day SMEs, so that they are at the local level, and they are already very, very well concentrated on services. They do not make lobby. This is the sense of my answer. Or maybe that's another thing that you were mentioning, the difference, the cultural and demographic change. The cultural change must be interpreted in Europe, because we have 27 different demographic and cultural change. So this is another element in which ICT can be one of the factors that can help the transition. But really what we need is an integration of policies, as I was telling earlier, and exchange of practices. This is what we try to do. Down there we also have the difficulties of languages, not only cultures, but but anyway, we are working a lot on this. The young generation hopefully will have English, or anyway a language as a common the language of ICT will be the language of this generation. So this is what we are really hoping. But it's also important network between associations. Down there, ICT is the main tool. We are working a lot on this. Then maybe if I have time I can tell something on what our local association are doing. I would like to talk about our example in Germany. Another main factor, another main use of ICT is the one of training. This is another fundamental issue and another fundamental services in which our organization have to concentrate. And in platforms, so we have here perfect representative of platforms, so it's not my job to talk about this, but I do ensure that this is the future. So we have to work on this to fill the gap between the world of education and job and employment. You know that in this year of hard crisis, one of the main problems of SMEs is not having found manpower. This can appear as a provocation, but this is a reality. So ICT, once again, can be a main factor for filling this gap. That's fundamental. These are the main issues in which we are going to concentrate. Okay,
thanks, Mr. Benassi. Mrs. Berbenni-Rehm, let's figure out one aspect of community building. I think it fits exactly to these aspects, which is Mr. Benassi mentioning. A current project of yours is called Integrating Good People into Better Teams for Mutual Benefit. What is the project all about?
It's a very interesting project because, let me say, it is based on the belief that for us, or for me, community building means to build upon real and sustainable professional collaborations and alliances. Real because they bring tangible results, and sustainable because they are built upon mutual benefits. Otherwise, they will not last. So, having said that, in PROMIS, we have a third aspect, which is communities of knowledge, where then, all of a sudden, the knowledge of people, what people have in their head, can be structured in a repository, which is a pyramid, and all of a sudden, then what has been built and what has been structured can be either shared between peers, associations, consultants, institutions, or sold to the customers via the e-shop. So knowledge is becoming community as well.
Knowledge is also urgent, needed for cloud management, Mr. Becker. So as regards current ICT development, everyone is talking about the cloud, also on CeBIT since you are approaching your organization since 2 years. Before, never one talks about the cloud. Nevertheless, it somehow seems that even the bigger companies, they are still much complaining about it. What do you think? What already are in future times maybe the effects of cloud services of European SMEs?
First of all, there wouldn't be cloud without the global players who have really driven the cloud story around the globe. When it came to Europe 2.5 years ago, it has been companies like Google, like Amazon, like Microsoft, like IBM who brought the cloud to Europe. Yes, the cloud has a lot of impacts to the market. For the large companies, it is a quite simple way to develop further in terms of implementing the cloud inside the company. We can call it outsourcing 2.0 or intranet 2.0, where all the values which are coming along with cloud computing are enabled in large companies already. That benefit is not to enable for the small media companies, so they have to share the same functionality, and then we are talking about the public cloud approach. And meanwhile, there are quite a lot of interesting services on the market. We use those services, even like PROMIS. We use at Eurocloud as well, because we also should take what we are telling, should use what we are telling. But in fact, for the small media enterprises, cloud computing allows them to utilize functionalities and services and to gain a flexibility and to gain agility for their business, for their companies, which are not possible if they try to implement that on their own. And that is one of the driving forces of cloud computing towards the future. Not to forget that cloud computing itself is not a new technology as it is a new business model, but on that new business model, new possibilities grow up. If you think about the growth of the internet traffic, which is predicted for the next coming years, where we are talking about doubling of traffic per year. If you think about the growth of stored data from whatever 1.8 zettabyte today, as IDC is communicating, up to 320 zettabyte in 2020. That is that enormous, which will not be possible if every company runs its IT on its own. That is only possible by the industrialization of IT, and that is cloud computing.
Mm-hmm. Cloud computing is a concept, some people saying. So it includes infrastructure as a service, platform as a service, but also software as a service. Mrs. Berbenni-Rehm, software as a service, cloud computing. What are the effects of future-oriented technologies on business management, especially in terms of compliance and providing free capacities in these companies?
I would simply put it shortly in 4 points. Mm-hmm. The first point is SMEs get rid of hardware. So they have the opportunity to hire a place outside, so they save costs. They can find the answers at a fingertip via a software as a service that allows it, because it has structures behind. It helps to save time, because they are advised professionally online via the consultants and the experts, and they can achieve evidence-based compliance, because compliance is something which needs also to show evidence that it is there, otherwise it's not accepted. So there are 4 points that, in my opinion, are very strong enabler towards what I don't like the word cloud, because cloud is something where you don't know where your data are.
Foggy, yeah.
But what I think is important is software as a service need to know where the data are. Then we build up trust.
Okay. Mr. Benassi, build up trust. So we are in a complete transformation phase all over Europe. What does UE APNE doing to promote these transformation processes proactively with all the organizations in the different countries of Europe?
Well, first of all, we are the main actor in Europe because we represent 13 million of enterprises. So we are, let's say, the leader. We hope to be the leader of this process. What is important, thank you very much. What is important is to consider that not only the innovative aspect, because when you talk about an enterprise, you have to think about the problems also. I was starting my answer to the first question like this. Not only the opportunities, the problem is the low capitalization, the vulnerability of SMEs. So we have to consider both, not only to be innovative, because if you say to a macro company, just be innovative, you do not allow him to grow, to live day by day. So it's not a concrete help. What is important that we have an association of ICT users, PIN SMEs, that helps us to transfer this concept through our members organizations. We also have sponsoring members, other companies that helps us, and PROMIS is one of these, and I thank Mrs. Berbenni for this. I want to do it in public, for this really terrific job that helps us to also to understand what you are going to promote, because anyway, when you are a lobbyist, you cannot be technician of and have the technical knowledge of everything. So we use this mainly these two ways. But what is important to say is that the innovation on ICT in micro companies. Yes, again, I'm not an expert, but we see, if I can give a generic answer, this is not an innovation coming from excellence. It's also coming from, it's a demand-driven excellence. So micro companies see what is the possible innovation in the market and try to transform this and try to sell immediately. This is a little bit what the smaller companies are doing. So we have to help them in fully entering all the range of innovation. This is once again, the hardest challenge that we have. So thank you for giving me the opportunity to just discuss about challenges.
Okay, thanks a lot, Mr. Berbenni. So if we come to a short conclusion of our show, at first, Mr. Becker, so how can we stimulate really the power of SMEs together with Eurocloud?
Well, let me start with a remark on developer clouds. We are facing a situation that more and more devices get connected to the internet. Not only the PCs, the notebooks, but there are the tablet PCs, the smartphones, different devices. But we will also see all sorts of machines and control units which are connected to the internet. That requires new software. Those new software will be developed in the cloud. When it gets developed in the cloud, new solutions appear which are of highest interest for the industry, because companies of all kinds and all branches can utilize those solutions to either getting more dynamic themselves, but also to expand their own portfolio and offering to the market. So think about an air condition manufacturer who provides air conditioning, and that air conditioning device is connected to the internet. So he can provide a service to control those devices in the field as an additional service. And things like that will happen more and more. And of course, that is one of the areas where we support those developments, because we see the benefits coming out of it for the industry.
A very short statement, Mrs. Berbenni.
Very short. Yeah. We are living in a world which is becoming smaller, faster, and multi-ethnic, even at local level. And here I would add bring in a new word which we might develop later on. Multilingualism is becoming a very important enabler, at least for the next two generations, and particularly for the SMEs.
Okay. Facing the challenge, Mr. Benassi, your final statement?
Well, final statement can be that we need a connected change. When I talk about connection, is not to, how can I say, to hide from the ICT, but just to say that institution and company must be connected. We cannot really bear that in 2012 we still have in some countries the necessity for a company to start up 110 paper certificates. So if we do not connect administration to the ordinary life of companies thanks to ICT, so the challenge is already lost. So please, let's connect all together with public institutions.
Thanks a lot to our guests here in our studio, and thanks a lot to you, ladies and gentlemen, in front of the PC cameras. And I say, das war eine schöne Sendung, ihr Martin Puscher.